Birth is something that I really knew nothing about until I was pregnant, and even then I was still quite scared of birth and the process. From what I saw in the movies, there was a lot of screaming. That was something that I really did not look forward to or really have an interest in going through. When I was pregnant, even for the first part of my pregnancy, I just was not really, I was kind of avoiding thinking about the birth process because I was quite scared of it. I was just from what I knew. I'd say about halfway through my pregnancy, I ended up doing a holistic birth course, and it was one of the best things that I did because I learned that birth wasn't necessarily the way you see it in movies or the way you see it in TV. It can be a lot more calm, it can be a lot more peaceful than what we're often led to believe. That's kind of why I wanted to film this video, because I had a really great and positive birth experience, and I know when I was sort of learning more that second half of my pregnancy about birth and having babies and all that stuff, it was really important for me to hear and see positive birth stories. And that's why I wanted to film my story to share with you. Because some parts of the birth I just don't really remember, I wanted to have Nancy, my doula, here to help me talk about it. And she can also touch on some of the parts of birth and labor that I don't really know all the technical terms. So she's gonna be here to join me for this video as well. Thank you for watching and listening to my story. I hope that this will help you if you are pregnant or if you're planning to get pregnant. I hope this will help you go in more informed and a little bit more knowledgeable about a potential positive birth experience. I ended up hiring Nancy based on the recommendation of so many mothers who have worked with her, and it was like unanimous. I had to hire her to help me out. So unlike, say, working with a doctor or midwives, you do actually hire a doula. So just so people know, I know that makes for some people not as accessible, but for me it was worth it and I felt it was worth every penny. So I ended up hiring Nancy. She came over to meet us before, I'd say maybe it was 30 something weeks of pregnancy. Really, it was such an eye-opening experience because even after doing the holistic birth course and learning more about babies and birth from reading, it was just such a helpful experience, especially for my husband. And we knew that we needed somebody there to support us in the process. We weren't sure because of COVID whether our birth would be in a birth center or if it would be in the hospital. And that's kind of what we were debating between, and we had no idea. And I just knew that I would like some extra support because we really felt in the dark about how things would unravel, because I've never had a baby before and my husband had no clue about what goes down when you're giving birth. So we ended up bringing Nancy over and she just walked us through everything to expect. She showed us, and we can share this little thing that she brought along, was how this, like what happens with the cervix and when the baby comes out. She was just walking us through every aspect. And after that meeting, my husband was so happy. He said, like, I'm super excited to be involved with your birth and to be part of this experience. And initially both of us were pretty scared about what was yet to come. And it was just such a calming experience, and we knew that we were in the right hands when Nancy was she just had us so at ease.
Yeah, a doula is somebody who's there for that, like Amy said, that you hire, who's there for your emotional support and is there just to take care of like the family, like take care of the mom and take care of the family, to make sure that you are supported.
When we did first meet Nancy, she was saying, have you thought about, like, given COVID, given the situation, the circumstances, it might be an idea to have a home birth. And at the time, Jeremy, my husband, and I were just like, no, that's not happening. Like we're kind of set on the birth center or a hospital, because we just, home birth was kind of this thing that, like, I mean, I'd heard of friends that have done this and I just didn't know much about it. So it was kind of like, no, hard stop there. Anyways, we ended up having a home birth, and we'll talk more about that and kind of how that all went down. In the morning, I woke up and I had basically some liquid streaming down my legs, and as I walked to the bathroom, it was dripping the entire way. There was like a trail of water to the bathroom. I ended up going back and waking up my husband and just letting him know, like, I think my water's broken, I'm not sure. And here in Ontario, we are lucky to have midwives, the option to work with midwives for our, as we prepare for birth and throughout the birth. And so we called our midwives just to let them know what had happened, and they were like, we're not sure if it's water breaking yet, like it could just be pee, like it could be other fluid, like we just weren't sure. And they said, just keep going about your day, don't worry about it too much, just keep going on with your day, go for a walk, rest up, because this could be the start of your labor. we'll just see what happens, wait and see if you have contractions. That morning we went out for a dog walk, and in my head I was thinking as I was walking and passing people, I'm like, it's crazy that I might be in labor right now and all these people are just going about their day and living life, and here I am potentially about to go into labor. And on that walk I started feeling some contractions, like period cramps sort of thing. They did start to kind of build up over the course of the day, so it was, I guess, early labor starting at that point. And throughout the day I was having contractions, and we kind of kept in touch with our midwife. We had gotten in touch with Nancy and just let her know what was happening. With contractions, you kind of want to time them out and see the space in between, and there's kind of this golden rule that it's like 4 minutes apart, 1 minute long. That's
lasting
when
for an hour.
lasting for an hour, and that's when you kind of, things are on, like things are happening. But that really didn't happen. I had contractions all day, they weren't consistent, and even throughout the night, poor Jeremy had a stopwatch going and like timing my contractions. We were awake all night that Friday because I was like having these painful contractions. It was really uncomfortable. I was lying in bed all night just kind of humming, because I heard that helps, which I think it does. I was humming through them, and I was just awake all night. Jeremy's awake all night. It was a really tough, long night, and I was like, if this is how it's gonna go down, this is gonna be hard. Like, this is gonna be really hard. And I think the thing is, and this is my thought, I don't know what you'll think about this, but when my water broke, or whatever that was that happened, I guess it's a water breaking, I was not ready. I was like, this is too early. I was 38 weeks, and I thought I needed the 2 more weeks to get ready for this baby. And I assumed, because of being a first-time mom, that would be a later birth,
right, like
40, 41 weeks. And that was just my assumption, and I was not ready for it. So I think that resistance, I think it made them more painful for me, because I wasn't accepting of this happening.
Right.
Like, I did not want this to happen. I wanted my 2 weeks. I wasn't done work. I had stuff to do. My house wasn't ready. I didn't have all the baby stuff. So for me, I was not mentally ready for that. And I think that's why those contractions were so painful. And then the next morning we woke up and ended up going in to see the midwife to get checked. And we had our midwife, Betty Ann, who was the on-call midwife, and we hadn't met her yet, and she's absolutely amazing. We went in and got checked, and she said she wasn't sure that based on an exam, I guess, she would have done an exam on me and checking to see if the water broke. There was a membrane, I guess, that covers the cervix, or that blocks, is that?
Yeah, so the baby's in the amniotic sac, but there's 2 layers of the amniotic sac. So there's like an interior layer and an exterior layer. And I think that from what was determined is that you may have had a Hind leak.
Yes, that's exactly what she said,
the exterior membrane.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what it was. So it was called a Hind leak. And that's something I'd never heard about before, of course. And she said, you know what, go about your day. Like, you're probably gonna have this baby within a few days or a week. Like, it's very likely. So we ended up going home, and actually that Saturday, contractions stopped all afternoon. I had nothing. I was just kind of back to normal and just doing my day. And overnight that evening, Saturday evening, I think I had 3 really crazy bad contractions where I literally had to hop out of bed, and I thought the baby had kicked me in the spine or something. Like, it was like these crazy hard contractions that were not comfortable at all. So then again, the next morning we wake up. I didn't sleep very well either, because of these 3 like super jarring contractions that I had to hop out of bed. And luckily, I think in the morning, Betty Ann texted us and said, like, give me a call. I want to just double check, because I want to see what's going on. I'm not sure that, your water didn't break. So I want you to come back in. So we went back in, and it was a really great experience, because Jeremy was able to come in. It was a weekend, and she's doing stress tests or non-stress tests to see, what was going on. She was testing the fluids and found that there was some amniotic fluids. She also said that membrane that was covering the baby was gone. The membrane was gone. So she's like, it's on. Like, labor is gonna happen. Like, you're gonna go into probably full labor and have this baby. And actually that Sunday morning when I was in, my contractions were back again. I was very uncomfortable. I was kind of like shifting around. Things didn't feel good. And even when I was lying back for some of these tests, it was really uncomfortable. But we knew things were happening as we drove home from the midwife. Like, it was a super uncomfortable drive. I remember every bump in the road. I was like, oh, this is gonna be terrible. Like, driving to the hospital, going over these, I was just thinking of, like, if I was in full-blown labor, how painful it would be to go over the bumps in the road.
Yeah.
And that's all I could think when I was driving home. But luckily these contractions weren't too bad. I kind of started feeling okay later in the day, and I had a really nice evening. So watching like The Holiday with Cameron Diaz, and then Vince Vaughn and Reese Witherspoon movies, we were eating a great meal. We were getting ready because we knew this was coming. And I think at that point I was like, okay, I'm having this baby. Like, this, I can't go back now. Like, she's coming out whether I want it or not. And that was a big thing, is that I think my mindset really switched that night. I just had a really great night watching movies. When I did have contractions, I would literally hop off of this couch and get into like a downward dog, cat-cow positions. And I found that my contractions didn't really hurt. Like I just kind of breathed through them. And that was just, it was so different from the Friday where it was super painful than to the Sunday where it's like, okay, I'm doing these downward dogs, I'm doing cat-cow, and just breathing. It was such a different experience. So now we have a baby here with us because she woke up from her nap. So she's gonna be on this video as well. This is Gwenny. So we were having a great evening eating. We had some vegan lasagna, watching movies. It was like the perfect night. It was actually snowing. It was a super beautiful evening. I was going through those contractions, doing my cat-cows, which is a yoga position and downward dog, and breathing through them and feeling really, really good. Jeremy he was timing the contractions just to see, what's going on. And ultimately he said, like, these have been going on. These are 4 minutes apart. This has been happening for over an hour at this point. He said, I think we should probably call the midwives and call Nancy. And you came over probably
like
around 11 at night. I was feeling pretty good. You weren't really sure what was going on with me, I guess, at that point.
Obviously you were having contractions, but you were coping so well with your contractions that it's like, is this still early labor? Should I stay the night? Should I go home and come back in the morning? It was a little bit questionable because you were just coping so beautifully. Like you were just chatting through all your contractions, like super chatty and
weird.
Social.
The first day, like the Friday when we called you, I was in a much worse position, feeling way worse than when we had you come over. We called Betty in and let her know what was going on, and she said, you're in good hands, just like Nancy will keep watching you, but I'm going to come later in the night and see how you're doing. So I think Betty Ann showed up around 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And at that point, she wasn't sure really either. Like she was kind of assessing me and had sort of the same thought as you, like this could be early labor, could be labor. We don't really know. We were all having like a lot of fun chatting, but ultimately Betty Ann decided that she should do a vaginal exam.
Yeah, because she was thinking, because we were both thinking like, okay, well, we're not sure what's, if this is actually active labor or not, because you were coping so well. So it was like, okay, before making the decision for people to go home and come back, maybe we should actually check, because I think we both had the feeling like, no, we think this is active labor. It just doesn't look like a typical active labor in terms of, again, you were just coping so beautifully. Betty Ann was thinking, okay, well, maybe I'll go home, but we should probably confirm. Mm-hmm. And then that's when she checked you.
Betty Ann ended up checking me, I think, at that time. It was close to around when she arrived.
Yeah, it was
so
like
probably
3:30.
3:30, yeah. And I guess I was 7 centimeters dilated. Do you want to explain for people that, haven't given birth or don't know about that? What does that mean when you're 7 centimeters?
Okay. So when you're looking at the progress of labor, there's 2 factors. There's how effaced a cervix is and how dilated a cervix is. Do you want me to bring up my uterus? Yeah, there's a lot of terminology that people encounter with pregnancy and birth that it's kind of a whole new world, and there's so many things that are new for people when they haven't had babies yet, or they just haven't been involved in the world of birth. So I've got my uterus, which Amy and Jeremy really liked, that I brought to our prenatal visit to explain things. When we're looking at, we'll hear people talk about how many centimeters dilated they are. There's really 2 factors that are being looked at and effaced. So the cervix is like the bottom of the uterus that sticks out into the vagina, and so it's usually a few centimeters thick, and it's usually like the texture, kind of consistency of your nose, and it would be closed like a donut, but like a closed donut hole. And so when somebody has a vaginal exam, they're checking to see how much thinner the cervix has gotten and how open it is, and then also the pliability of it too. They can get a sense for the texture of how soft it is, because all those things change in labor. So as the uterus is contracting, it's actually the long muscles of the uterus that are pulling the cervix open. And that's really the work of labor, is to pull the cervix open all the way, which we call 10 centimeters dilated, which essentially just means that there's no cervix there anymore, and there's a free opening between the uterus and the vagina for the baby to come through. So as these long muscles of the uterus are contracting and it opens the cervix gets thinner in terms of what we can feel from the vagina, and then it opens, and the how many centimeters dilated is just like is based on how many fingers they can put in that opening of the cervix. So when Betty Ann checked you, you were 7 centimeters dilated, so there's still some cervix left, but more than halfway in terms of being fully dilated, and you were 80% effaced. So that means that the thickness of the cervix was 80% less than it would have been to start with. So eventually it gets like paper thin, and then eventually it's just all the way out of the way.
And I think at that point, like, I was still feeling really good, and I was kind of surprised because I didn't know that much about like how much you're dilated and what that all meant. But I was like, that's kind of like far along. Like, and I was feeling really good. And Betty Ann had actually, she just kind of said like, should we do this here? Like, should this happen? And honestly, it was snowing out that night. It was a big snowstorm. We were very comfy here. We had really nice music going. We had sort of on the TV, we had waves, like we had the ocean sounds. We had good food. We had the Labor Aid, which I was drinking. I just had like, everything was so nice here. It was so calm and tranquil. So all of a sudden we're like, okay, it's on. We're just going to do this here. And basically the carpet was rolled out. Betty Ann had rolled in like an entire hospital room, it seemed like. Like literally it seemed like where you were sitting, where our videographer's sitting, that section of the room, it was just like
the oxygen,
everything,
all the equipment, like
it kind of happened fast when we were like, let's do this. Like that, everything just happened, and we had sort of like the floor here covered, the couches covered, to make sure that it was really clean and sterile. It happened really fast, really smoothly, almost like I didn't even realize this was all going on because it just was so efficient. We knew though that in order to actually have the baby, we needed another midwife present, right? There has to be 2.
Right, so the midwives will always, when you get to pushing, they'll call in the second midwife, so that there's 2 midwives here at the time of birth. So one to take care of the mom and one to take care of the baby if both needed care after birth. So there's always the 2, and again they've got all the equipment, so it's the same as pretty sure it's
same as being
equivalent
hospital.
of a level 1 hospital that they have with them. So any medication for hemorrhage and or oxygen for the baby if necessary, so all the big emergency things can be dealt with.
We did need 2 midwives, and knowing that we were in touch with my other midwife, who was my primary midwife, Leanne, and she was actually, I think, sleeping after her birth, or she was recovering. Like she was kind of, she was gonna join us in the morning. And based on where I was anyways, it didn't seem imminent that the baby would arrive. So this is probably like 4 in the morning at this point. And I had tried to go to sleep. You guys thought maybe it'd be good for me to get some rest. But every time I would lay down, that's where my contractions would get really painful. So I ended up just kind of walking around the kitchen, doing like lunges. It was a full-on boot camp. Like it was like literally I did a boot camp. So I was doing squats, lunges, and just kind of kept moving, kept hydrated, drinking the Labor Aid. Jeremy and I were kind of like, I was trying to get him to hug me because it was nice to have that sort of, we were both so tired, so he was hugging me, and it was really like nice and calm, other than the fact that I literally did a boot camp. I probably burned a lot of calories that evening. So that was happening. We were kind of trying to get the labor to progress, right? Is that the point of...
Well, there was one point that you were mostly fully dilated, but you had a bit of what's called a cervical lip.
That's what, I forgot about that. Cervical lip, yes.
So, so that's when so you're pretty much fully dilated, baby's head's there, but there's like a little piece of cervix that's still kind of in the way, and you don't want to push when you've got a cervical lip, because then the cervix can get really inflamed, and then it would reduce the amount of space for your baby to come out, and you could injure your cervix. So trying to do everything to get like her head to move a little bit, get your body to move to help pull that, get that bit of cervix to move out of the way. And I think that one of the reasons why you were coping so well with your contractions was how much you were moving, because you were really listening to your body and just did what felt good. I just felt
like I had to move.
Yeah.
And that's true. Yeah, I was moving the whole time. And the cervical lip was one thing, but then there was also that Gwenny was facing one side, so her head was facing like one way, and she wouldn't have been easily able to come down the vaginal canal anyways at that point. So that was also why I was actually doing all these exercises,
lunges and stuff.
When Leanne arrived, she checked me again. There was another vaginal exam. This was probably like 9 in the morning,
probably.
I think something around that. So after doing like a full-on boot camp at night, Leanne checked, and she saw that Gwenny's head was looking to the side still. So that's where boot camp number 2 happened. So I was not only doing like thrusts, I was doing like hip thrusts, downward dog with thrusts. And she was like, you've got to just kind of tilt your pelvis, basically.
Yeah.
To encourage her head to switch. So I had the lip in the way, and then Gwenny's head was kind of looking one way. So there's a few little obstacles there that kept me very active for like many hours.
Yes.
And I was really happy, I have to say, that I kept very fit and healthy leading up to that, the birth, because it came in handy to be able to do all those squats and lunges. So Leanne had me doing like pelvic thrusts, and ultimately her head shifted.
Yeah.
And the cervical lip was gone. And when that happened, that was time to like go.
Yeah.
But I didn't have, I heard, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but often people have an urge to push.
Yes.
I didn't have that.
Yes. So often people have, it's called the fetal ejection reflex, but it's like a really strong urge to push. Like it's not something that you're actively doing, it's something your body's doing. And one great way that it's been described to me from a mom that I know was, she described it like vomiting, but like in reverse. So it's like, it just completely reflexive and like your body's doing it, but it's like this way. It's like, oh, it's happening. But you never had that sensation. Yeah.
So I just had to push. So I was told to go to the bathroom, sit on the toilet, and pretend I'm taking like the biggest poo of my life, and I'm constipated basically, and pushing it out. So Jeremy and I were in the bathroom. This was sort of our little powwow moment where Jeremy was like, are you okay with this? Like, should we go to a hospital? Like, are you fine? I was like, no, it's on. This is happening. This baby's coming out. Like, I knew there's no way I was leaving at that point.
Yeah.
Like, there was no moment in my mind. I had no fear of this. I was like perfectly focused on what was happening. It was like a weird, intense focus. And Jared was just checking in because for him it was really overwhelming, which is partially why having you there was so good, because he was nervous about what was happening because I was getting vaginal exams done. People are sticking their hands in me. I'm having to do all these exercises. He's not sure if it's okay. You know, having you there was really good for that reason, because he was a bit nervous about what was happening. I tried to do the sitting on the toilet, and I just like, we were almost scared, thinking like, is the baby just gonna plop out? Like, we didn't actually know. We're like, if I push, is the baby gonna fall in the toilet? And that's
right.
what Jeremy's worried about too. And it just wasn't working for us. I ended up taking a bath as well, just to kind of calm down. I think because there was a lot of adrenaline going too. And while that was happening, I think you went to go get a birth stool.
Yes.
Which, for anyone who doesn't know, a birth stool basically looks like a toilet seat, but it's
but on legs.
On legs. And that was like a genius idea. So we ended up bringing the birth stool back in just right in front of us right here. And that's when we started doing the pushing. And that was a long process. That was like, I think, an hour and a half of pushing, which was super hard. And I was being constantly monitored, which that's one thing I noticed. So every time I'd have a contraction, I was having, the midwives were putting like heart rate monitors to check me and the baby. It was very, very closely monitored. And then you were coaching me because they were saying like, you have to bear down. But for me, like, I didn't really have like that. It wasn't coming naturally to me to like bear down and push. So you're instructing me like, breathe, hold it in, push down. So a big part of what Nancy did was like kind of coaching me through the breathing part, which I had no idea what to do. And the midwives were kind of instructing me like, this is where you want to feel like you're pushing towards, like push this way. Leanne actually put her hand in me so that I knew where to aim with the pressure. Yeah. So this was going on for about an hour and a half, like standing up, contractions, heart being monitored, pushing. It was a long process because she was slowly moving down.
Yes, which is normal. Like, it's, you don't
want to be fast.
You don't want to like, have your baby just like plow through, right? Like, so it's like a slow expansion of tissue, and it's like, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, which can feel like you're not actually making the progress that you want to be, but it's very normal. Like, we can see a little bit ahead, and then it's retracted. And then we see a little bit more, and then it's coming back. But that's good. It helps to like let everything expand.
That was huge. But you kind of feel like in the moment, like you're like, why isn't this happening faster? Like even to the point where I'd be like, I was kind of more pumped up because I think of the adrenaline or oxytocin that might because your body produces lots of natural hormones. So I wasn't like, it did hurt. I guess I felt sensations. Like it didn't. It wasn't a pain sensation, but I could feel things like expand. I could feel the weight pushing down. Right. Like I could feel things.
Like pressure
But it was like a natural, like it was almost like I was naturally sedated in a sense because I was so focused in the moment. And with that kind of that pushing and contractions happening, eventually I remember I was sitting on the stool and they're like, okay, she's coming, like it's happening. And you guys said, reach down.
Yeah.
And I could feel her head So that was crazy. Like I actually felt her head. And it took a while even from that point though. For me, I thought, oh, once you feel their head, they must just like pop right out.
Right.
But no, it was more of that like contracting, standing up, getting my heart checked, the baby's heart checked. Everything kind of kept being checked and slowly progressing. And that's kind of how you're supposed to do it. But I just thought, oh, her head's like, I must be done almost. And it was a little bit discouraging because at the same time I was still working so hard to like get this baby out, but it was a slow process. And they actually, I remember, I think Leanne was slowing me down at one point to like make sure that I wasn't over pushing.
Right.
Eventually, of course, she did make her way out, and that was an amazing experience. Like I remember feeling the ring of fire that everyone talks about. It wasn't what I thought. Like I knew it was happening, but again, hormones.
Yeah.
You're just kind of in the moment. I remember the ring of fire, so if anyone's watching this, look it up. You can see what it means. But basically, you're feeling like a burning sensation. That's when their head's kind of fully coming through.
Yeah.
We were doing a lot of, standing up, sitting down, contractions were happening. The baby's heart rate was constantly being monitored. And I was mostly sitting on the birth stool, which was right here. And Jeremy, my husband, was behind me. And he actually at one point he had breast pumps on each breast. And that was a suggestion from the midwife, and that was to kind of increase the contractions.
Yeah, to increase oxytocin.
Oxytocin,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Oxytocin's what's driving the contractions. That's the hormone that causes the uterus to contract. But we also release oxytocin when we release milk. So the breast pump would be stimulating the same hormones so that you could help increase your contractions. Yeah.
I did not know that's why I was.
Yeah.
So that's why. So Jeremy was sitting behind me, and he honestly never thought he would find himself, with his wife giving birth at home while sitting there holding breast pumps on either boob. Who knew that was going to happen? So I don't know how much longer after that, but ultimately she made her way out, of course. And when she did emerge, she pooped on me, the meconium, which is the baby's first poo, and she also peed on me, and then she cried. And then when they I think it was Leanne would have held her up.
Yeah.
She opened her eyes for the first time and looked directly into Jeremy's, who was sitting right behind me. So it was like such an amazing experience for him, because like his daughter is born and then looks at him right in the eyes. Like that was so amazing. That's when, she was brought to me. We did sort of the skin to skin thing, and we let her sit there for a while and just kind of get familiarized. And there's action happening around me. I didn't really know what was going on, but there was things happening. Jeremy ended up cutting the cord after several minutes.
Yeah.
Probably 7, 8, I don't even know how many minutes.
I think it was even after the placenta was born.
Yeah, the placenta.
Yeah.
So after giving birth, you also have to give birth to your placenta. So the placenta came out. I kind of remember that. That was like, and it was just like a big blob.
Yep.
And literally,
just a blob.
It's just a big red blob. And after that, that's when they cut the cord, or Jeremy cut the cord. So it was a really nice process for us to be home. Jeremy was really involved, whether it was like breast pumps, cutting the cord. He was there for everything. He was such a good support.
And very marked difference from when I first talked to you, and like being like, well, we're not sure with COVID in the hospital, and maybe that I would be there and Jeremy wouldn't be able to be there because
we didn't know what to do.
You guys weren't sure, but then to be able to have like that full support and him being able to be fully involved and right there for everything without having to give up other support.
Yeah. It was amazing to have like the two people, because you were kind of really coaching me, whereas Jeremy was literally just like physically supporting me by being there with the breast pumps or just giving me water. Like he's often just pouring water in my mouth. Do you remember when I was like standing up, he was pouring water in my
and just being there for you to like hold and like holding your hand and just being there to love you. Like it was amazing. Like it was such an amazing experience to go through that way. And then the baby came out and she was healthy. She was great. Like everything kind of. What was your first experience when you like?
Oh my gosh.
Your baby is like
actually
in front of you for the first moment.
Well, what I remember is I said, like, how do I hold this baby? Because I remember she's like she's all slimy, and I didn't know what to do with her. And I remember holding her, and she was so cute, and I was like, wow, like I didn't know what to expect. Like we didn't have any idea what she'd look like. I mean, we saw an ultrasound, but to see this little baby and that was actually in me, and I brought her into the world. It was so cool to see her, and she's so small, and like. Just it was cool. She was so cute. Like that's what we noticed, even though she's all slimy and stuff all over her. It was just a crazy experience that I also felt like I don't know really what to do now, right? Because I wasn't someone who really thought a lot about being a mom and didn't really know how to hold her. We didn't really practice holding babies, but it just kind of came after.
Yeah.
And after we cut the cord, I ended up lying down on this couch, and she was breastfeeding pretty much right away. I had like blankets over me, and I was lying here and feeding her.
And it was such a cool experience. Like, she knew what to do, and I kind of like knew what to do. Weirdly though, I felt really uncomfortable. Like I didn't feel like I was a natural. It just kind of, we figured it out. At that point, everything was winding down. We had a really amazing, like, we were all eating. We had a huge feast. It was such an amazing experience to be sitting here like so comfortably, like wrapped up and warm, having the baby. You guys were all eating and we're all chatting and having tea and food, and
you wouldn't have to worry about getting up and going anywhere with your baby. Like, you're just awesome. Like, you're home. Like,
we just stayed home. We didn't go anywhere. Like, there wasn't that like getting your baby in a car seat,
transferring up all your things. Yeah.
So after everyone was eating and chatting and we're having teas, I ended up going to get showered, and I think you were helping me shower. This is where a lot of things were blurry because it was so much. It was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot of mental, physical, emotional, like it was a lot to take in, but I know I felt just really cared for because I had you, I had Jeremy, I had the midwives, and everyone was kind of looking after everything, to the point where when you guys left, it was like my house was just restored. Everything was back. It was calm. It was peaceful. I didn't have to go outside. We spent such a nice night here with the baby. We had pizza. I had a little sip of beer. I could barely, like, it's just everything was so overwhelming. I couldn't even kind of process.
What would you say worked best for you in terms of managing your contractions? So, like, while you were having a contraction, what worked for you?
The main thing was, and I think back to this would be a really important thing to share with anybody who is preparing to go and have a baby or go through the process of birth, is that I reminded myself that this is a temporary thing as well. A friend said to me, just remember, it's only one day, really. It's one day of doing something that might be hard. So I thought about that a lot, like, this is one day of something hard. And I also spent a lot of time breathing and just being very present in the moment. I'm always on my cell phone in normal everyday life. I don't think I picked up my phone at all that night because I wanted to be really present. I had no desire to look at my phone or to be anything external. So I stayed really present, really internalized everything. And I was able to do that because I had so much help around me and support that I was just like taking everything in, breathing, and really switching positions and keeping active and moving. Like, that was a big part in the pain management. And I think why not at one point did I even think or say or mention, like, give me drugs. Like, I didn't need, because it was just a very present experience. Even during the parts where I was fearing, which was like, say, the ring of fire, like that, I was like, it's happening. It's in the moment. This is fine. It's going to pass. So I think that was a big part of making the pain, if that was the word I'd say, the sensations more bearable.
Yeah. And I think that, like, what a big thing is that can overcome people in labor is wanting to be at the end and wanting to be somewhere where you're not right now. I'm just doing this one contraction right now and not getting into, like, the spiral of, well, how much more do I have to do this and how many more hours is this going to be and what's next, or is it going to get more painful, and like really being in that moment of like, this is the only thing I'm doing right now and that's it.
That was truly what made it possible to stay home, I think, because there's no way I was moving. I was so happy here. And it all turned out well. We had little baby Gwenny. We felt like superheroes after that day, though, because we were up for like the whole weekend, basically hardly sleeping. And then we found ourselves, after you left and it was all quiet, it was just like, we're here with this baby. We really didn't know what to do. Like, I remember asking you guys, what do we put her to wear to bed? Like, we didn't even have newborn diapers. We just were totally not prepared, but it all just, we figured it out. We figured it out. Well, that's it for the birth. So thank you for watching. I hope that this is helpful. And for those of you who are seeking out positive birth experiences, I hope that this was what you needed or what you were seeking. For anyone interested, Nancy actually did, back in the day, live stream her own birth, and it was covered by a bunch of media. Thousands of people watched you. It was covered in various media outlets. So I'll share one of those articles below. And that is it for now. If you have any questions or any comments, please leave them below. Thanks, Nancy, for coming. It was really helpful having you here because you filled in a lot of the blanks. And thanks to everybody for watching.